Hello everyone, in this video we are going to talk about dependency injection inside ASP.NET Core. And here I have a project that we have created in the previous tutorial. The tutorials are not connected, you don't need to worry. Here in this video we are just gonna talk about dependency injection. So in this project that doesn't have a dependency injection, we have created a CRUD functionality. Here I have an application DB context. As you can see, the DB context that is using Entity Framework Core. And here inside the CRUD controller, we are creating a new application DB context and accessing the DB context that we have created. To cut the long story short, dependency injection is one of two ways of how to remove dependencies in your code. It is very useful for configuration changes after compile time. And it is a great thing for unit testing. In the CRUD controller, as you can see, we are dependent on application DB context. What dependency injection will do for us is that it will remove this dependency, so we do not need to create a new application DB context here. And we can just inject it inside a constructor. So let's create a constructor first. If I just write down CTOR and double tap, you can see it will create a constructor for me. Now I need to write out application DB context. Let's call it context. And here I'm gonna say this.context gonna be equal to the context that we have received from the constructor. Now our controller is not gonna create an application DB context inside of itself. We are going to inject that application DB context inside the constructor, and the constructor gonna set the injected dependency inside our context. Now that we are getting the application DB context from the constructor, we need to inject this application DB context, so when we run our application it will inject it automatically. Here inside our application DB context we have an on configuration, and we are configuring our DB context inside the class itself. But we want to configure it inside program CS and inject it in any constructor that is using application DB context. So let's go into program.cs. Let's remove the unnecessary lines. And here I'm just going to add builder.services.add DB context. I will give it the name of my application DB context, which is application DB context. Now the add DB context needs us to give him a parameter, which is DB context option builder, that we are going to use SQL Server and give it a connection string. So let's do that. And here we are going to use the arrow function. So let's say options, an arrow function, and I'm going to say options.use SQL Server. And inside here, we're going to give it the connection string that we have. We can give the connection string like this, so like we have inside the application DB context. If I just copy this and paste it here, it's okay. So we can use it like this, or a more efficient way is to move this connection string to AppSettings.json. So let's remove it from here and go to AppSettings.json. Here let's create a new key, which is connection string. And inside connection string, we're gonna have a main connection, and our main connection value going to be the connection string that we have. Let's save it and go into program.cs. Now to access that connection string, we need to get the builder.configuration. Here we have a get connection string, and inside get connection string we need to give the key of our connection string, which was main connection. Now we are getting the application DB context and passing an option inside of it, but we are not getting any option inside here. And because we are using dependency injection, the options are going to be injected inside our application DB context as well. So we do not need to use on configuration. Instead, what we need to do is to create a constructor. If I press Ctrl dot, here are some suggestions that we have. Here you can see it says generate constructor application DB context with options. If I press, here you can see it's creating a DB context option inside my constructor using the name options. And the only thing that we need to do is to set the DB context options type to application DB context. Now, if we run our application here, let's get some values. As you can see, it is giving us the values. The application DB context is being injected inside the controller, and application DB context options is being injected inside the application DB context options class. What I described here is a technique called constructor injection. There is also property injection, where not constructor parameters, but properties are being used for defining and resolving dependencies. Think of property injection as an optional dependency, and of constructor injection as a mandatory dependencies. But discussing on this is beyond the scope of this tutorial. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.